Welcome back. Today we do a quick one on the NF Audio RA05. So those of you familiar with NF Audio, you know they have a range of IEMs that go from professional use all the way through to gaming, and I have a gaming one that I'll talk about later. But this one they call the music series, so primarily for music, primarily for people who kind of want an all-in-one solution. So this one does have a USB-C end to it. It does have mic controls, or has volume controls and mic controls, and it's got a very, very tiny shell, which is kind of right here. So these are 6mm dynamic drivers, so micro DDs is what they're really called, and it is literally very, very tiny, and probably the main selling point on this one. I mean, there aren't that many IEMs that are this small, and we could look at it side by side with, something. One of their other sets is the NM2 Plus, I think. So very traditional style shell, traditional style size. And then you can kind of see this one is, there's not a whole lot there to RA05. It is very tiny, very slim, kind of, I call it about as close to a bullet style set that you can get without it being a actual bullet, because it sits really kind of deep into your ear. I mean, this is kind of way in there. And to me, what you mostly feel is really this part, is right, this whole chamber right here, which is pretty much a bullet shape, and this you don't really feel too much. But yeah, very, very comfortable, kind of a deep fitting, cool style looking set. The pink, it's kind of a iffy color there, but that is what they sent. So as I said, don't underestimate the power of a plug and play USB-C, mic controls, volume controls, and a tiny, easy to fit IEM. Super useful. Not everyone wants to, buy dongles and deal with the fit and tips and all these things. Very nice, very smart to have an all-in-one solution. That's exactly what NF Audio did. And I know sound quality should be really at the top of your list as to main selling points, but I think this one, they did do a pretty decent tuning on it. But, I think by far it's the all-in-one. Here's everything you need in the box, and it works really well. And I think that is kind of the main selling point. So as the fit, as it relates to sound, and I will say that you do have to, I had to push this one in kind of in there, and I used a larger tip too. The tips that they actually included, and the other cool thing about this one is they put like a 2.5mm damper on the edge. You don't see that too often. You usually see that guy somewhere on a vent that's kind of right about here. So yeah, pretty cool. When you pull it out of the box, you see a very familiar looking 2.5mm damper tuning filter. You don't see that in that location very often, if ever, but you do on here. So, but I will say the fit, I use larger tips just to get a better seal. If you get a slightly okay seal, I think it tends to be a little brighter than what it actually is. So definitely push it in a little bit. Definitely play with all the tips that they include and see which one works best for you. And sound, I'll say the RA05, it does say music series, like I said, but the tuning that they use is actually a very general purpose style tuning. It'll work for music, it'll work for calls, it'll work for podcasts, casual gaming. It has this clear, clean, very mid-centric style, sharp style. And when we look at the graph, you can kind of see exactly what they did here. If you look at the Harman target that's in the dotted line, you can kind of see they twisted the graph. The tuning looks like it's twisted Harman just a little bit to the left or counterclockwise. So kind of remove the focus on the sub bass and the bass that you would get with a Harman style set, and really your focus becomes right here, this whole upper mid area where the vocals are, right in the mid, the meat of most tracks, games, podcasts, dialogue. They put a real focus right there. And this is an 8K peak for my coupler. It's not really that high, but they definitely twisted this one to the left, so there's more of an upper range focus to it, emphasis to it, and less over here. So exactly how it sounds, when you look at the graph, I think it's pretty much, the tuning style is very much as you would expect it to be if you just look at the graph and you haven't heard it. And at the same time, I will say the graph will also sound slightly different because it is a 6mm dynamic driver. So this will hit almost the Harman point at 10 dB on sub bass. There is some sub bass to it, and if you have tracks that have sub bass, you'll actually hear that kind of poke through right about there. But it's not like a 10mm dynamic driver at the same 10 dB. It's kind of a lower moving less air, kind of 6mm dynamic drivers, no matter whether it's from NF audio or other ones, always tend to, the bass shelf tends to look really high, but in your ear, it's actually a much lower apparent, or how it actually sounds in your ear is always a little bit less than what it looks like on the graph. And I will say the same thing about here. This looks kind of super bright-ish, and it's not that bright. Again, part of it's the driver, part of it is the fit, getting it in a little bit deeper. You don't really notice that peak as much, and they push this a little bit forward. So it is forward, but it shouldn't sound peaky or bright. It should actually sound better than what the graph is, but it's really hard with 6mm dynamic drivers. They're always going to have some variation of how they sound in your ear versus what they look like on paper. So the bass, again, not really the focus here. As I said, they kind of twisted this one to the left, not the focus. And it's just harder for microdynamic drivers, I do expect. But the sub bass is present, mid bass is lower, and it gives that classic clean mid sound. Again, as I said, they put a real emphasis on here. This is a very clean, kind of a sharp, very nice dialogue kind of style for music. It kind of comes across in the vocals. That's pretty much what you hear. Forward, dead center, it's kind of right there for you. The mids, as I said, the real focus or emphasis is really on the vocals. And as I said, the signature would work on anything that benefits from clarity in the mids. This mid-centered, as the bass and treble seem to roll down a little bit. The mids are kind of a nod to NF Audio's professional tuning style. And again, like I said, they call this one the music series, but when you listen to it, you can kind of see their tuning style really relies heavily on that midpoint and the focus and being able to monitor that without being distracted by what's over here in the sub bass and what's over here in the upper treble. Put a real kind of focus on how they do their professional style sets. And this one, again, says music, but I think they actually are sort of bridging the gap of what they traditionally do and just making it a little bit more musical. But it's sort of undeniable when you hear it what this set is really good at doing and portraying and playing back. It's very much right there in the bits that you would monitor in a professional setting as well. So the treble, upper, lower, lower treble has all of the emphasis. The upper mids, lower treble, right there. As I said, this is kind of rises quite a bit early. Doesn't rise super high, but it definitely rises early, and that brings everything to the forefront. And then it kind of glides down, and you don't get the upper treble fatigue for long sessions. Again, more of a monitoring style. You have a whole lot of emphasis here. That's kind of your center of attention, but no distractions, no sibilance, no long-term fatigue and long sessions, those kinds of things that happen out here when you bump frequencies in the upper treble too much. They kind of brought all that down exactly as you expect in kind of a professional monitoring style tuning. They kind of pull that off here as well. So stage, this is sort of not really a stagey style tuning. Again, there's not really a whole lot of mid bass for a whole lot of depth. They brought this really forward, so that's pretty much going to be right there, close to you, very intimate style. So yeah, I wouldn't say this is much of a staging tuning as much as a paying attention to vocals tuning. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and I will see you next time.